Hey, I'm Bryan Fenley, and we are gearing up. You are here with us for another edition of the On to Something podcast, a sports media podcast where we go beyond the biz. We're going to talk about those things, as a lot of you are familiar with, but there's a personal side to people that gets lost in the shuffle of working in sports media, which we highlight here as well. My guest today is Tom DeCorte, needs no introduction, coordinating producer at ESPN. There are some things you know about him, and there are some things, even if you're one of his closest friends, that you're going to find out in this conversation. I guarantee it. A little bit about me. I do volleyball for ESPN and also call tennis and other sports for other media outlets. Without further ado, before we get started, don't forget to subscribe. All right, here is my chat with Tom. If there was a contest for the most rambunctious, most energetic, most diehard Xavier basketball fan, I don't even know why you'd want to put a ballot in, because we might as well just give it to my guest today. Tom DeCorte is a former Xavier Musketeer, coordinated producer at ESPN, working right now with Max Kellerman on his weekday show, This Just In. We're going to tell his story here in a neat way on the On to Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley. I've done volleyball for ESPN and do other sports for other outlets. Tom, I'm excited to have you on, and I see a big fat head of Scott Van Pelt. What does he think about your hair?
Uh, I don't think he has any thoughts about my hair. I think he's very comfortable where he is, and I'm very comfortable where I'm at.
Well, the goal of this conversation is to make you feel very comfortable. And for somebody like yourself, who is in charge of running shows, and you've always got that producer, coordinating producer hat on, how are you going to hold up here? Because now this isn't your show. And so it's a different role for you, which you're not used to. How are you managing so far? And how do you feel like you're going to manage?
Oh, I'm sure I'll be fine. I know we've had some conversations about doing this in the past. I'm not always comfortable talking about myself, but if I can bring some knowledge and some good conversation in the world, then I think it's a good thing.
Absolutely. And obviously, this is, as many would attest, and Tom, this is not sort of a look at me operation. As you know, we're here to tell stories about your life, but to help others, which is so cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then dive into the personal side of your life as well. So we learn about the work side and the personal side. Speaking of the personal side, on Instagram, your little bio says lover of life. What about life do you love the most?
Uh, I really just love the opportunities and relationships you have along the way. Some that some that you expect. Obviously, I'm close with my family and my wife, my kids, my staff here, work that I work with every day. But there's just so many things that you're not expecting along the way on a day-to-day basis, and that's what I that's what I gravitate towards, and that's where the memories are.
How do you prepare or expect the unexpected mentally? How does that work out for you?
Well, I think part of it is it's one of those traits that I think you're born with or you aren't. And I always had a desire to work in news, whether it be sports or news or whatever. I didn't really know when I was a kid which direction it would take me. But as I went through my high school and college and early professional years, I tried a lot of different things and did a lot of different jobs. And it always came back to whenever I was doing something under deadline pressure, that's always where I felt like I was excelling. And so that ultimately led me to um, the television business. And that when I've been at ESPN now for almost 23 years, and every job that I've had that's been under constant deadline pressure, those have been my best roles. And recognizing that in the in the middle part of my career here so far, I think has made a big difference.
Was there, or how did you recognize that? How did that come about for you?
Well, actually, the I was working on features when I was an associate producer in the early 2000s. And there are a lot of great feature producers at ESPN. I'm sure you've talked to many of them. I am not one of those people. Um, Glenn Jacobs, who was running the feature group at the time, he was my manager, and we would constantly, go over the different projects I was producing. And let's just say there were a lot more misses than there were hits. It just wasn't something that I was, it was something that I had thought that I had wanted to do when I was coming up as a PA at ESPN, and it was a goal that I had really set for, and it just didn't fit me. Didn't fit my skill set, didn't fit my talents, and we sat down and I said, I just don't think this is working out. I think I need to go in a different direction. And he was really great about opening up other opportunities for me, putting me in conversations with other folks who I could make a move to. And I made a move to the highlight operation. And honestly, if I don't make that move, we're not sitting here talking about this today. We're probably talking about something else, but we're probably not talking about me working on the projects that I've had the opportunity to work on the last few years.
Where do you think you are, Tom, if you didn't make that pivotal move in your career and in your life?
Oh, it's hard to say. I don't really play the what if game so much, but, I think that there are many, inflection points in every person's career. And, that just happened to be a big one. And, part of it is recognizing it yourself, but also I was very lucky to have someone else who took on those tough conversations and helped manage me through it. And that was really what made the difference, honestly. And, I give them a lot of credit for listening and for helping me find the place where I belong.
Other people as well have helped manage you, in air quotes, along the way, one being your wife, and how she has come to be there for you. What does that look like? Relying on her as you've made this sojourn and taken the steps up and up in your career.
She's been great. I mean, she met me in mid-career. We met about in 2007. So I was already kind of in it. And it took some getting used to, a lot of nights, a lot of weekends. But, relationships find a way. Relationships that are really meaningful, they find a way. And, now that I'm on a weekday show, she's liking that a lot better. I can tell you that. But, all things change, as we know, in this business, and we'll enjoy the daytime shift while we have it. But I'm not, one thing that I'm very confident in is our relationship endures because we focus on it and we care about it, and we're constantly talking about it.
The idea of communication and talking through things, that it's so spot on with what you're saying, because oftentimes when you and anybody in this business, they get so overcome by the work and the time that they lose track sometimes of the communication with their significant other. And so for you to do that speaks volumes of how you're able to find that time. And I'm sure that your kids appreciate that as well. And I saw this really funny picture as I was sort of getting ready for this conversation with one of your kids, where here he is wearing a football uniform decked out in a cardboard box, and he is running plays in your family room. The creativity that your kids have, where do
Well,
they teach you?
my son is sports obsessed. The last couple of years, he's kind of caught the bug for it. He's 8 years old and he can name all 32 NFL quarterbacks. This is not something that I asked for. That's just the way he is. But one of the things about them is I just kind of let them be who they are. And my daughter has some interest in sports, but not a ton. She's really musically inclined, and that's her passion. And I get way more nervous when she's playing a violin concert than I do of any athletic event that they've ever participated in. So, whatever they're into, I'm into.
Why do you think your nerves reach an incomparable level with her during those moments?
She played violin. I played violin as a kid. I know how hard it is. And it's just, when you're out there on an island, that I guess maybe I just relate to that, but you know, it's just it requires a lot of precision, and she's better. She's already better at in sixth grade than I ever was or will be. So she's got it handled.
What's the most enjoyable thing about watching them grow and the stages that they're going in and out of?
I enjoy the obstacles overcome.
Yeah.
Being a kid is hard, and it's hard at every stage. And it's hard. I think as parents, it's always hard to. You don't want your kids to fail. You don't want them to go through hard times, but it's those things that make them who they are. So giving them an environment where they can have some missteps, but safe missteps, I think makes a lot of difference. And sometimes I succeed. Like any parent, sometimes you succeed at it, and sometimes you don't.
Well, there's a lot of succeeding in your career and when it comes to your family. And being a dad, how has that altered the way in which you operate from a work perspective and putting together shows and working with top talent? The list goes on with a number of top talent that you've worked with. But right now with Max and that collaborative process, having a different perspective and being a dad, how do you find that even subconsciously that influence seems to work its way into your line of thinking when it comes to work?
I think just as my kids have gotten older, I've just chilled out a little bit. I'm still pretty intense and on a daily basis, and certainly I have my moments, but I think um, the micro things of day to day television, I think I'm better at handling than I probably was when I was younger. And as a parent, there's always something micro going on at the house or wherever. So I think that probably has something to do with it. And just I think what kids have taught me as far as it relates to the workplace is the importance of not assuming anything in communication. Kids don't, if unless you tell them, kids they're not in your head. They don't know what your expectations are unless you directly tell them. And I think it's important, as a manager, to really set clear and attainable expectations. And that's something that I probably really struggled with at times earlier in my career. And I would certainly not say I'm perfect now, but I would say that I've improved. And I think, being in the family dynamic and growing up with that in my professional career is definitely something that I've been able to improve.
How does working with your team feel like a family, and how can it feel like a family?
Well, the biggest thing is one, like I said earlier, communicate expectations clearly and try to be rowing forward together. And then the other thing is allowing people to expand and produce their role. One of my mentors in here at ESPN always used to encourage everybody in his group was produce your area to the best of your ability. And I've kind of taken that to heart. And, there's always a temptation to kind of swoop in and say, oh, no, do it this way. And, one thing I've tried to do is try to empower, whether it's graphics or, the segment producer or the, PAs and APs editing the video, like empower them to make those decisions. And then we can talk about how those decisions went afterwards in a constructive way, instead of just swooping in saying, oh, we need to do it this way. Now certainly there are times where you have to say like, oh, we need this specifically right now, but trying to give opportunities within each day, each week, each quarter, each season to let people grow in their roles, I think is something that it creates an environment of trust. And that's something that I've worked on a lot of good teams, and that's been characteristic of all the good teams I've worked on.
When you have that environment of trust, how much better is the on-air product?
Usually better. Usually better. There have been some shows that that I've been on where we've had maybe not as much trust, but we had great shows anyway, and vice versa. But one of the things as a manager that I really feel is strongly about is you are going to get the best people's effort when you create an environment that they want to come into every day. And that's something that I try to keep tabs on with every level of our team is how are we doing right now? How are you feeling? How are you feeling among the group? I try to meet with each person on my staff once a month, just to check in. How are you? How are you feeling? How are things going? What are the problems that you are encountering right now that maybe I can help with? And I think again, just trying to create some trust and empower our folks to say, hey, I need some help here, and giving them an opportunity constantly in a comfortable environment to do that.
Tom DeCorte is with me. I'm Bryan Fenley. In you giving so many opportunities to people, I thought about a really interesting opportunity where you had Scott Van Pelt eat Skyline chili.
Oh,
And I remember that there was a back and forth, playful bet between you two involving college basketball, involving your Xavier Musketeers. What did he say about the taste of it afterwards?
I thought he was very kind on air. I legitimately thought he might be ill. I did. I feel badly because I lived in Cincinnati for 6 years. I went to Xavier. I can count the number of times I had Skyline when the alcohol wasn't involved. So I feel for him that was his introduction. I also, the way we produced it, like they sent it to, they sent us the traditional cans, but they had these microwave pouches, and that made it a lot more, the effect of that in the piece was I think made it probably a little bit more uncomfortable for Scott than I probably should have made it. But he, as usual, he's a great sport about that stuff. He's him and I, we both share a love of college athletics, and we were able to have some fun and make a fun little video about it. And he was a good sport about it.
You guys had a great time working together, and how have you seen him grow? Obviously, he is a superstar talent, and you're a humble guy. But if you could say, if I were to ask Scott the way in which he was positively impacted by you, Tom, what do you think he would tell me?
He was very good about listening to other folks' ideas. He has a very clear vision of what he did have a clear vision of what he wanted the show to be, but he was also really good about listening to the other folks in the room, regardless of their level, about the ideas they had. We were very lucky. That's probably that's like the dream team of production people that I've ever worked with, like just from top to bottom. Like I always felt like oh boy, I'm really lucky to be here. Like just the amount of talent that we had around us when we were producing that show was just amazing. And he was very good about taking all the folks in that room's ideas and crafting them into something. And he was a good listener, and I'm sure it continues to be a good listener. But that was the one takeaway. He was just that's something I'll always be appreciative of, and I think that's one of the reasons we were able to have success with the show, was that he was really good about listening to other folks' ideas and then incorporating them into his own vision.
This might be a broad question, Tom, but what do you like to listen to? And what do you like to listen for?
As it pertains to what?
As it pertains to work, as it pertains to what catches your attention in everyday life, things that to you are interesting. Yeah. What do you
So
listen to?
one of the
Yeah.
things I've learned is that the things that are interesting to me as like a kind of like an ultra sports consumer are not always the best thing for our viewers. And I've learned to separate what kind of show do I want and what it's about, what kind of show do our viewers want. And that's something that I probably wasn't as good at 10 years ago. And I've developed a mindset about separating the things that I find super interesting and focusing on the things that I think fans find super interesting. For example, I like to go deep. Like I'm in a 30 team NBA fantasy league that where you build like rosters over numbers of years. Like, so I'm interested in the 10th man on the Detroit Pistons, but our viewers are not interested in that. So I know, like, just to kind of separate my own fantasy nerddom from the, broader topics and broader conversations that we're having on a show like we do with Max. And I think that's something I've learned over the years is you're not producing for you, you're producing for the people. And I think that's something that I always try to remind myself of.
In you being able to step outside of yourself and really hone in and feel the temperature of the viewers, what an incredible, invaluable tool that is. How do you find it? We were talking about this before we started here, Tom, about how when you work in the business, you pick up traits and they find a way to infiltrate other areas of your life beyond just work, where this is what the business is all about because you love it and you're passionate about it. But for you, in the idea of stepping outside of yourself, you've shown that you've done it at a very high level and it's helped you from a work perspective. But where do you see yourself maybe doing that in other areas of your life?
Uh, I think one of the things I always just try to do is I try to, and one of it is just, it comes from the pandemic, which was just trying to always check in on the people that are important. Um, I think, the pandemic was horrible for us for so many reasons, both everyone's got a personal and professional or whatever story that just it's terrible. But how have we learned about what have we learned about ourselves? What have we learned about our lives that's important since then? And I think just the idea of, whenever I'm encountering folks, whether it's, you know, randomly out about in public or whether it's my friends or family or whether it's people here at work, because I always try to remember, like, we just don't know what people are going through on a day-to-day basis. And just trying to not have that first reaction be defensive, but have that first interaction with somebody be as welcoming as possible. I struggle with this all the time. Like I'm far from perfect in this area, but it's something that I'm just trying to work on, knowing that, everybody's going through it. And, I found that when I am able to accomplish that, the results, whatever they are, whether it's personal or professional, improve.
And you said this, in on Facebook, you were talking about how, and talking about the pandemic, that it was a wake up call to really better physical and mental health. And those are issues that come to the surface for all of us at all times. But just to be able to focus on that for you as we wrap up this conversation, Tom, the ability of which you haven't, I don't want to say improve because you've always been this, but the way in which you take better account of yourself and take care of yourself, I should say, how has that evolved in, say, the pandemic and the way in which, like you said, it caused you to check in on yourself and those more, but the ability for you to have more of an idea of what it takes to take care of yourself.
Well, then, so now that we're 3 years on, I think for the first year I did really well. I got myself in much better physical shape, and I was able to, work on that. I've since frankly regressed in that area, but mentally, I think I have done a better job of understanding that my mental health is important and taking steps on a regular basis to try to make sure I'm where I need to be in that area. And I think more than anything else, just be cognizant of others, like I mentioned before, that everybody's going through it and trying to create an environment around me that's more positive and doesn't put people on the defensive. And instead, I always think about it as how can I get people to lean forward and be more engaged as opposed to move back and like just physically moving away from a conversation or a project or whatever. So that's something I think about a lot. How can I get people to move forward?
Which is at the essence of what I wanted to highlight here as we conclude this conversation, is highlighting some of these traits, not, as you said earlier, not in the sense of saying, look at me, but just to say what it takes for those who watch this to see how you are able to maneuver different things and obstacles that happen in your life and in your career, and to gain inspiration from that. And I think that with your openness and your transparency and what you were able to share, it's going to help a lot of people, and it's going to give a lot of people an extra bit of motivation, which is priceless for people. And as I say one more thing, when we talk about mood boosters and we talk about, for you, engaging others, you get talking about Michigan football, Xavier basketball, Detroit Tigers baseball. That'll always be a mood booster for you. But I have to say,
Tigers, I don't know if they'll be a mood booster for me this year, but the other two were pretty good place.
That they are. Also a good place is what he's doing right now. This just in with Max Kellerman. You can, of course, watch that on ESPN weekdays at 2 p.m. Eastern time. That would be 11 a.m. Pacific. Tom DeCorte, coordinating producer at ESPN. I'm Bryan Fenley, volleyball for ESPN. Thanks so much, man, for taking us down that road. And I know that even people who know you well are going to glean some fun facts and learn some insights about you that maybe they didn't know before.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the time.